And Jovan, I want us to talk Lakers because you dropped a hell of a stat as we were sitting here in the Thomas and Mack Center talking about, what we were going to get into today. As the Lakers try to build out their roster, try to get Kyrie Irving out to Laker land, supporting cast matters, right? Repeat that stat you dropped about guys who played on the team last year and their current state of affairs.
Yeah, so you have 7 guys who are in the rotation last season who are currently not signed on NBA rosters. And I think that just illustrates how bad last year's roster was and how many of those guys just kind of around the league are viewed as guys who were on the back nine of their careers and haven't been signed. And as Nate and I were discussing, maybe Carmelo Anthony gets a contract somewhere, but guys like Avery Bradley, Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington, Trevor Ariza, I think they might be out of the league next season. Right. And these guys were starting for the Lakers or playing key bench roles last season. So to see the moves that they made, I think they're headed in the right direction. But the West is loaded. You got the Clippers coming back, the Nuggets coming back. I think teams like the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies and the Pelicans getting better. So the Lakers, even with, I think, a better roster, are still looking like a play-in team, potentially even if they get Kyrie Irving, in my opinion, but especially if they keep Russell Westbrook. Well,
and Slater, I'll throw it to you because you got a good feel for this situation. But to me, it's wild that, so quickly, last couple of years within the league, we've gone from, the evolution of the super team approach and players getting so much more involved. We know that with the Russell Westbrook trade and him getting to L.A., that it had everything to do with LeBron and AD essentially hosting meetings at LeBron's house with different players to kind of put their front office hat on and play that part. It doesn't work. It blows up in their face. Go out to Brooklyn. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden get together. That blows up. Now, to Jovan's point, are we guilty of thinking, man, you get LeBron AD on kind of a revenge year?
Depth matters is what you're saying.
Right, because Kyrie, LeBron AD back in the day, a couple years ago, you just
doesn't matter. You Sam Amick at the 4, Nate Duncan over here at the 5. He's
definitely a 5 over my 4. Yes. Look at this. I'm looking like a JV player here.
Flip side of that point, look at the Warriors fringe guys. After the season, they just had Gary Payton. Gets 3 years, 28. Otto Porter gets $6 million a year. To leave the Warriors, and there's a lot of stink on that Lakers season, and I think it's rubbing off on plenty of people. It's true. Look, stars matter too. I'm not going to sit here and go, the Memphis Grizzlies should be the title favorites because they've drafted so well, in the middle part of the draft. Stars matter, but you can't whiff as much as the Lakers whiffed. And I'm curious. I don't know. I can flip it to Nate on this, but what do we think about the way the Lakers did pivot? I mean, I'm not sure I love their current roster construction, even though it is different from what didn't work last year.
It's a little better, I would say. Last year, building on what Jovan was saying, Danny and I do position rankings for our podcast, and no Laker other than LeBron or AD was in the top 35 at their position. Ooh. I still think that's probably the case.
Yeah.
That maybe Damian Jones or Thomas Bryant could get in there. Maybe Lonnie Walker could step forward.
But as far as that's just the first, you go Damian Jones, Thomas Bryant. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, the center spot's probably their best position, just looking at kind of who's in the rotation.
Well, I was thinking that too, because, of course, with Russ there, the whole thing was AD is going to start at center. They have to do that for the spacing, but they just don't have enough good players at the other positions. It almost makes more sense to start at center, particularly if it's, Jones and Bryant have both shown some varying shooting ability. So maybe it does just make sense to start at center because you don't have reasonable players at the other positions.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think Thomas Bryant is going to be the starting center. And, he was talking about how with conversations with Darvin Ham is bringing over a lot of what Milwaukee did and how important that stretch 5 role has been in Milwaukee with Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, the last couple of years. So I do think that, I wouldn't be surprised if Damian Jones, he was 10 to 29 on threes last year. If he starts taking some threes.
Whoa, now. You sound like a Warriors assistant coach about 5 years ago.
The Lakers need stretch. And that's my, I think on paper they are better. They're younger. They're more athletic. I think there's some improvement there. But they're still really small in the perimeter. Just if you look at that perimeter group, everyone's 6'4" to 6'6", where you got teams like the Warriors, the Clippers, the Celtics, who can throw out multiple 6'7" to 6'9" guys. And then they also can't shoot. Their best shooter that they added was Troy Brown Jr., who was a league average shooter last year. Everyone else they added was below league average. And they only have 2 above league average shooters on the team right now in LeBron and Troy Brown Jr. So I just look at it they're small. They're not good at shooting, and I think there's a lot of defensive concerns with the current roster. So I'm very like skittish on kind of where this team is going, even with Kyrie. I mean, I think he'll massive upgrade on Russ, but there's still so many holes in this roster.
Well, real quick follow. We're assuming our tone is as if Kyrie's going to be there, but I think you and I, we've talked offline a bit. There's a lot more context there. What, if anything, can you share about what you think is happening with the Lakers front office right now with their star players, as far as other possibilities, and how that roster is going to look when training camp comes around?
So there's a stalemate right now, I think, between, really multiple teams. The league's kind of in a gridlock right now with this whole Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving situation. But I think particularly for the Lakers with Russ and Kyrie, from what I've heard, the Nets' plan right now is to move KD first before moving Kyrie. So I don't think you're going to see a Kyrie move happen until KD gets moved. On top of that, they don't want to take back Russell Westbrook, and they want at least one pick back. The Lakers have been hesitant to give up that draft capital, but I think you got to do it. If you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you need to maximize your window for next season. And then in addition, I know that they've looked around Indiana. Can we get a Miles Turner and a Buddy Hield? The Buddy Hield deal was kind of the pivot point for them.
Chasing it for years now.
Last offseason, is that something where Miles Turner can be that stretch five, good rim protector? Buddy Hield gets you some more shooting on the perimeter. But I think, we're not going to see anything happen really until KD gets moved. But with Kyrie, I know he wants to be in LA. I know LeBron wants him in LA. He's been behind the scenes putting some pressure. I think, I don't want to get too into it, but the Genie Bus tweet, I think, had something to do with some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. So,
for what it's worth, and I'm pulling the curtain back a little bit, I looked into that. I couldn't make a ton of progress other than the Lakers owner was feeling melancholy about Kobe. And so, but
I think there's a slight divide right now where LeBron wants Kyrie and some people internally might prefer a Miles Turner, Buddy Hield type deal. And
gosh, I don't know why there might be hesitation to take on Kyrie considering the last couple of years and the way they've gone.